What's the word, guys? Welcome back to the W number. Make sure you guys let me know in the chat if you can hear me and if you can see me all right. Everything's good. We got a crazy story, man. Like, this story is literally a true horror story. Like, this is a real life horror story. There is a place, right, in Florida. It's called Mariana, Florida, that it's a reformatory. It's a school for DYS. It's like a DYS for Massachusetts. It's the same thing down there, but it's a reformatory. It's basically like the old school DYS jails for kids. But this is not just a regular DYS or a reformatory. This was like a horror show, dude. Like, no bullshit. And the things that went on in there will blow your fucking mind. Like, this is no joke. This is gonna be one of the craziest things that I've ever talked about. And the thing about it is, and like it says on the thumbnail, is did this trauma result in all 38 of those children going on to death row? Right? Did all of those kids leave that reformatory and end up taking somebody out because of the trauma that they received while they were in that reformatory? I'm going to read you a story. I'm going to read you not the story, but the article I found on it, right? And we're talking about like 80 something murdered children. We're talking about handcuffed to the walls, poured boiling oil on. Now, bodies are missing. We're talking about 80 something missing graves, children who will never be found, people who will never know what happened to their kid, sexual abuse by the staff, and it's going all the way up until 2011. That is very, very recent. That is not like, oh, something way in the past where we're talking about, like, this is stuff that happened while I was still a child and still going to DYS. This is stuff that happened to me and things that affected me. And that's what it was basically. Like, I've had a long day. I'm not going to lie. But what I will say is that I saw this story and I was instantly like, I have to talk about this because all these things these kids go through, even though it wasn't on that level, I went through myself. And there's a huge question in the air about this type of treatment and the treatment that we receive as kids, even as so far as going back into our home. Like, kids, and that's talking about the kids that went to these reformatories too. Like, so the reformatory was taking kids that were orphans, people that didn't even commit crimes. These kids were locked up for things such as not having a place to stay, like no parents to live with, or minor things that aren't even considered crimes, all the way up to murder. So there was kids there that did have murders, things like that. But it was almost like the land of the forgotten. Like, I couldn't imagine being a parent and having my kid up in one of these reformatory schools. Not for nothing, but when my mother used to come up and see me in DYS, she would come every single week. Now, every single week since I was a little tiny child, my mother would be up there visiting me, talking me through these crazy fucking situations and trying to support me and shit like that. But I remember there was a time she came up to visit me and I had two black eyes. Every blood vessel in my neck was popped. Every blood vessel in my eye was popped. I had marks all over my face and neck from being choked out and beat up. As this is, as a child, I never swung one punch that day. You know what I mean? I didn't swing one punch at the staff members. I didn't do anything that they couldn't take care of me with much less force than that. You know what I mean? But let me get into this story, and then I'll get into all the ways that I relate to this story and the ways that you can relate, and the real questions, not just the way I relate, but listen to this story. Like, show up here, listen to this fucking story. Like, nothing else needs to be added to it. That's how wild it really, really is. And it actually inspired a movie called The Nickel Boys. And I'll talk about that a little bit after, but let's go over this real quick. So, over the past decade, hundreds of men have come forward to tell gruesome stories, and actually have a clip of one of these guys. I'll try to play it after I'm done with this, right? So, hundreds of men have come forward to tell gruesome stories of abuse and terrible beatings they suffered at Florida's Dozier School for Boys, a notorious state-run institution that closed last year after more than a century, right? So this was written in 2012, known as the White House Boys. And it's crazy because the fact that I don't know about this story, I mean, the video got a lot of views, the one that I found about it, but it's like, why don't I know about this? Why doesn't everybody know about this? This is something that should be plastered all over every news site in America, but for some reason they don't broadcast things like this. And why is that? Is it because they're secret supporters of the system? Like, they can't slander it. There's things behind it. I don't know, but all I know is that it receives an undeserved little amount of attention, and that's why I'm talking about it today, because it just needs to be known. Like, these things go on in our country, modern day times, right? And wait till you hear. So, known as the White House Boys, these 300 some men were sent as boys to the reform school in the small panhandle town of Mariana in the 1950s and 1960s. They have joined together over the years to tell their stories of the violence administered in a small building on the school grounds they knew as the White House. Hold up. Sorry. Some 81 boys are known to have died there. 81 boys. But their remains are buried as a mystery. Where their remains are buried is a mystery that researchers are now trying to solve. They still haven't found them, right? Imagine that, 80 something boys, right? You didn't know when it was coming, says Jerry Cooper, who was sent to the school when he was 16. These were not spankings, these were beatings, brutal beatings. Cooper is 67 now. He was sent to what the at one he was sent to what at the time was called the Florida School for Boys in 1961. He'd been running away from home and hitchhiking when he was picked up by an AWOL Marine driving a stolen car. A county judge charged him with car theft and sent him to the school. Some of the kids like him were charged with crimes. Cooper says others were there for running away from home or because they didn't have families. A lot of orphans were there that did not have places at times, and when they were sent to, and then they were sent to Mariana at those times, right? In and out is what, according to where they could live. They weren't there for any crime whatsoever, Cooper says, but we had many boys who was there for smoking in school that were incorrigible, right? And at one point, I was literally told I was incorrigible. I was an incorrigible person. That means that there is no hope for your reform. There's no hope for your rehabilitation and reentry into society in any meaningful way. And you are written off as a person and no longer given the attention you deserve. Now, these kids are getting, I'm going to get right back to this. And the next part of it is a history of brutality, right? And this is going to get into what they did to them, right? And I'll just do that right now. We could get to my part after, but like, crazy. So the Dozier School for Boys has been known by several names. It opened in 1900 as the Florida State Reform School on 1,400 acres west of Tallahassee. Throughout its history, the school was known for its harsh conditions and brutal treatment. Over the years, a succession of reports and commissions called for reforms, but little changed. Cooper says he did his best to stay out of trouble, but after several weeks, he learned about the beatings firsthand. School staff got him out of bed at 2 a.m. one day and took him to the White House, where he says they threw him on a bed, tied his feet, and began beating him with a leather strap. The first blow lifted me a foot and a half off that bed. Now they're using a heavy weighted leather strap, not just like a belt or something like that. They had a leather strap meant for beatings. So this was specific for this type of thing, right? A beating belt, like a big, thick leather beating belt. So, and I've seen all this stuff. So that's why I'm saying it, right? So Cooper passed out, but a boy in the next room later told him he counted 135 lashes, bro. 135 times. They beat a little boy 135 times with a weighted leather belt. And every time that strap would come down, you could hear the shuffle on the concrete because their shoes would slide, and you could hear the swoosh, bam, swoosh, bam. As incredible as it may sound, Cooper's story is not uncommon. There are dozens of White House boys with similar tales of beatings they received at the school in the 1950s and 60s. Several years ago, they began telling their stories in newspaper accounts and TV reports. Florida's former governor, Charlie Crist, ordered a state investigation into the allegations of abuse, torture, and deaths alleged at the school. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement interviewed the White House boys and former staff, but said it couldn't find enough evidence to support the allegations. Now, if you ask me, an eyewitness testimony is enough to send somebody away for life. But when it comes to testifying against the state, they can't find enough evidence with over 100 personal accounts of these stories, right? Now, not over 100, hundreds. And I'm talking about hundreds of legit accounts with details they could never know, things that they shouldn't have awareness of these feelings if they didn't exist, right? The awareness of these things happen. Like, this is not stuff you make up, right? So check it out. And they found evidence. I'm going to get to that, right? They did find evidence, right? So it all boils down to civil liability, says Roger Kaiser, a White House boy who helped form the group and who has written about his experiences at the school in the late 1950s. They do not want anybody to be able to have factual evidence that would make them pay for these, what I consider to be crimes. Of course, they're crimes. They're worse than they're worse than just any crime because they're committed by the people who are supposed to be looking after them, who they are trusting with. Not only they're trusting to take care of them and keep them safe, but their parents and families are trusting not to let them get murdered by staff members who are so vicious and so fucked up that you couldn't even imagine how they would be towards your kids unless you were there and seen it. It's almost like those people who leave their children around babysitters who are like mercilessly beating their children, and they find out on the nanny cam, like, too bad we didn't have nanny cams or cameras in these reformatories, bro. Like, that's what they should have had right from the rip. And they did have that technology. It was 2011, bro. We're not talking about way back when. There's just too many stories, Kaiser says. I know of one that I personally saw die in the bathtub that had been beaten half to death. I thought he'd been mauled by the dogs because I thought he had ran. I never did find out the true story on that. The fact that he was in a bathtub beaten half to death in a reformatory is enough for me, bro. Like, you don't need to have the truth behind it. The truth is the kid's half beaten to death in a bathtub and died, right? That's the truth. Why? What happened doesn't matter. It happened while they were in their care. You know what I mean? It happened while he was in their care. That's enough. That's a crime. And you didn't report it, and you buried his body in some unknown grave where you will never find him. That is murder, and that is disposal of a body, right? State investigators said that using school records, they were able to identify 31 former students interred in the school cemetery. Records show 50 other boys also died at the school with no indication of where most are buried. And I'm going to get to all your comments and shit. Just let me focus on this for a second. I had a long ass day. I'm super tired, so I'm trying to focus and shit. But yeah, definitely let me get to these comments. And I'm glad to be here, and I appreciate everybody for showing up, man. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. And if you want, you could join and become a member for $2.99. And while I'm on this, I'm gonna throw up my sponsor real quick and show him some love, because that's what I'm here to do, man. This is my business. So yeah. That's my sponsor, Whoppers. If you're going to buy quality THC from Tennessee, this is what you got to do. Go through these dudes. And I'm telling you, I smoked it myself, and the shit's actually really good. So let me get back to the video and the story, guys. Sorry about that. So searching for unmarked graves, right? Oh, hold on. Let me finish the last part. So, but in the recent months, researchers from the University of South Florida have been spending time on the school grounds working to answer some of these questions, right? Searching for unmarked graves, like a farmer driving a high-tech plow. Archaeologist Richard Estabrook, and now I'm going to get to what the actual tales of abuse and what they were actually saying they did in a second, because this is not even touching on it. It's insane what they were doing. I'm talking about like shackling them to walls like they used to do in the old Holland Detention Center. If you go down in the basement down there, you'll see all these tunnels that connect the hospital. And they used to have the Holland Department of Youth Services Center there. That's where I first went. That's the first DYS facility I went to. And if you go to school there, you go down in this little basement. I know anybody who's been to Holland that's watching this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been there. They probably showed you these same things. When they open up the door to that hallway, you can see on the walls manacles that they strapped the patients to the walls while they waited for their shock treatment and other things. Allegedly, that's what they said they were for, right? And then they had the little rooms where they would go into, and they would be, given shock treatment, torture, whatever the heck they used to do in those sick places that they didn't have any type of oversight on. Because these reformatories in these places, even now today, I know they have a lot more oversight, and they changed the laws. So there's a lot of people paying attention where they didn't before, especially in states like Massachusetts. But even here, they do not pay enough attention. And I'm telling you, people are getting abused every single day. And I was one of those kids before they changed the laws, mind you. It was a lot different for me than it is for kids now. And I'll get into those stories, right? It's fucked up. And those staff, and I could see them, the attitude that those staff would have amplified in a place where they had no oversight and no one to no one to answer to, because these are fucked up individuals who work in a place to take their fucked up stuff out on these kids who have nobody that cares about them, orphans and people without families. Like, those kids are prime victims for abuse, sexual assault, all those things that were happening to them. And they did happen all the way up until 2011. And that just goes to show you that things do happen right here in America, and while they're watching, because this wasn't unknown at 2011. It got shut down in 2011 due to reports, way too many reports of sexual abuse coming in from the kids who were leaving there. And so they finally came to and were like, look, we got to shut this place down. There's way too much shit going on with it, and they're changing the name all the time, allegedly, right? So it's like they knew something was going on and turned a blind eye to it because they needed a place to put these kids, right? They took the abuse and fucked up shit because they needed a place to put these kids. That is what they do. And it's the same thing they do to people in like convicts, where they put them in prison and things like that, going upstate, like going to different facilities. Like, if it's fucked up, they don't care. They're putting you, they need to put you there because they need to put people somewhere, right? And it's just crazy, right? So he stops. All right. Searching for unmarked graves. I'm going to get into the second part. So he stopped pushing for a moment to show what appears as wavy lines on his equipment screen. Signs he's found another grave. This sort of disturbance as it goes down there. These are graves they're finding that were never reported. So they're going around with those little grave things, and they're looking for radar to find the lumps of bodies of children buried on the grounds. They found 81 unmarked graves. 81. How does 81 children just go missing out of nowhere? You could not even begin to try to explain that to me, dude. Because these kids are tracked and monitored in most states. Like, how do you not know 80 something kids are dead, right? Not for nothing. There's all kinds of kids that are reported dead, that died. They when it first started, they said there was all these mysterious reports of deaths due to illness and sickness and mental health. But that doesn't explain what happened. It's just that they were allowed to write those deaths off as that and then not answer questions about it, which is wild to me, dude. They have so many steps and layers, incident reports, things like that. And for a government, they pay attention to those things. And I was telling someone recently, like in the Max, for instance, right? They write those disciplinary reports on you and they sauce it all up. It's because they take those incident reports, those D reports, and at the end of each year, probably, they send them all to these research centers and the people paying attention to what they're doing to be analyzed and see if they need funding, right? And so that's why they sauce those reports up so much, so that they can look and say, look at all these things going on here and all these fucked up reports. We need to give them more money so that they can handle this shit. And that's why we all get fucked, because they're getting told we need this to look like this. We need so many things to look like this. It's like traffic stops at the end of the fiscal year and shit. Like, they're just doing all kinds of fuck shit, bro. And we are subject to this shit, whether we like it or not. So this is a sort of a disturbance as it goes down there. Estabrook says, pointing to the monitor, that's the classic indication of a grave. Forensic anthropologist Erin Camerl is leading the research at the Dozier School. She's an associate professor at the University of South Florida, who became interested in the case after hearing the White House boys' stories. At the cemetery, just a clearing in the woods near the school. And shout out to that anthropologist, because Erin Camerl, right? She heard what was going on and said, you know what? And maybe it was just for the story, I don't know. But either way, she decided to lend a helping hand and find out once and for all what happened to these kids, and get some closure for the families who are just missing children, because there's got to be at least that extended family wondering what happened to my relative over here. He went to that school, Reformatory, and never came out. We need to find out, type shit. Like, I would want to know. You know what I mean? I would want to know if that was my family. Would you guys? Let me know. I mean, would you? I don't know. Maybe I'm different. But when you look at the state hospital, the prisons, the state prisons, the other state institutions at the time, there are very meticulous plat maps you can reference. You know what I'm saying? That's what I was just saying. They have, even in that same state, they had this one reformatory that they didn't have to report on all these things, but everywhere else has meticulous records of these things. And if you look at each city in every city in the country, they have metadata on all these things that go on. So if you have abused kids and violence in the city, or the amount of stabbings, the amount of shootings, the amount of domestic abuse, the amount of positive things too, like the programmings they do offer. It's like every little thing, all the aspects of what's going on in those communities. And it's called like a health and wellness map of some sort. Like it has like the community wellness map. They have metadata on all this shit. The government knows exactly what's going on, where it's going on. They take into account every legit report, whether they act like they do or not. They're doing it. And then they're sitting back and talking about how they can get away with it and whether they have to do something about it or not. And then they're going, oh, well, no one's saying anything. The families don't even care. So whatever, like we have to fucking put them somewhere. Like, oh, who cares if 81 people just show up dead, right? But when you look at the state hospital, the state prisons, the other state institutions at the time, there are very meticulous plat maps you can reference, Kamal says. Or if you or a family member today, you can say, if you are a family member today, you can say, where is my great aunt buried? Oh, I see. I was just saying that. And they can show you exactly where. So, so why that didn't happen here, I don't know, but that does stand out. And that's obvious. That's obvious, like burying and disposal of a body, like that. You didn't want to let people know what you were doing. You disposed of the body and didn't say where it was buried. You don't do that unless you killed that person, neglectfully or willfully in any way. You were cause of that person's death and you buried them somewhere. Like that is what you do. You know what I mean? They hid the bodies and then they got caught. You know what I mean? And it shut down, bro. So, and it took till 2011. Imagine that. 2011 it took for them to actually be like, okay, well, let's go look for all these kids that are missing and these bodies that were buried, and we had no idea where all these fucking children are, but let's go check it out. Maybe they, like, wow, it took that long. That just blows my mind. So Camaro says identifying who's buried in the graves would require exhuming the bodies, something that can be done only if a family member of one of the deceased requires it. That's where Glenn Varnado comes into the story. Laying an uncle to rest a century later, Varnado is a businessman from the Central Florida whose uncle Thomas was sent to the school in 1930s when he was 13 years old. A month later, he was dead. Varnado wants to exhume his uncle's remains and bring them back for burial in his family's graveyard. He's hoping Camaro's research will make that possible, but he believes the cemetery where she's been working isn't the only one on the school grounds. And that's to say that they only found 81 bodies and they're still looking for more. So there's gotta be, and like you said, there's probably not just that grave. Like they had to have run out of space in another one, or run out of space there and used another one. Like they'll find more. If they found 81, they'll find more. Like that's a lot. You know what I mean? He took me to a second place and said, here's where we think the 5 kids that died in the fire in 1914 are buried. Your uncle could be buried here. And that's another aspect to this story. Right when the thing opened up around 1914, there was a blaze in the main house and all the kids in that house died, right? There was no exit strategy, nothing. They just rebuilt it, said oops, and started over again, right? Varnado isn't sure. And this is the way I would imagine you could picture it, right? So picture 81 kids in a room, right? Standing all next to each other, and all those kids' lives that could have been anything other than the torture they existed for while they were alive, right? And that's like these kids grew up fucked up and then went into a place where the state totally manipulated them and then murdered them, and then no one gave a fuck. And it's been this long until someone gave a shit, right? He took me to a second place and said, here's where we think the 5 kids that, okay, so Varnado isn't sure where the second cemetery is located. Camaro and many of the White House boys believe it's on a section of school grounds that's up for sale. The sale, though, is now on hold. Last week, Varnado went to the court and secured a temporary injunction that halts the sale until his uncle's remains are found. There is absolutely no question and no doubt that people that worked at that facility during the late 80s and early 90s knew then and know now that there are other places on the grounds of that school where children are buried. After blocking them for months, the state now has agreed to allow Camaro and her team to access the rest of the school grounds. After blocking them for months, that is a clear indication that they were still trying, even after all the exposure, to cover up any further heat that comes on them for this shit, right? There's still people working in that government that were in 2011 when this shit was still going on. So they're probably sweating right now, right? The White House boys believe Camaro's work, and this is almost over. So hold on. The White House boys believe Camaro's work will help uncover the truth about what happened at the school. Eventually, they hope to receive an apology and compensation from the state of Florida for the abuse they suffered there. Okay, I'm actually gonna read you the thing about what um they say actually happened. And also they have a thing, they had put a lawsuit out, and that's part of it too. Dozier School, hundreds apply for restitution for abuse. Florida to pay millions to victims of abuse at notorious Dozier School. The Black Boys of Dozier, renamed the Alfred G. Dozier School for Boys, was a prison reform school slash labor camp that operated from 1900 to 2011. The real story of the White House boys. This is a PBS thing. Maybe there's a video and I'll play it for you. Hold on. There actually is. There's a PBS documentary on it, but I don't think that this studio is actually good for doing the reactions anymore right now. But so what I was going to tell you about how I relate to this story, because I'm saying, right, if you look it up, so hold on. I have some things right here. So if you look up what exactly happened to them, they say that they were killed with hot oil. So a kid was killed with burning hot oil. They murdered him with oil, burning oil. This is like straight torture stuff. Like then there was other ones that they manacled and then strangled to death, right? Like just straight offing kids. You know what I mean? Like beating them to death and then throwing them in the bathtub. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how did that happen? Like nasty stuff. In what happened to me in DYS and what made this story more important for me is the fact that things happened to me along the lines where I could have been a victim. I could have got killed. Matter of fact, I was close to getting killed. I had every blood vessel. I'll tell you the story of what happened. So Thanksgiving night, my whole family was coming up to visit me, and I had my older brother there, my twin brother there, my mother there, my father there. That's like one of the first times, maybe the only time in my life that's ever happened, and it's never happened since, probably due to some of this trauma and things that happened to me during this period of time. They didn't want to see that happening to their family member. Like, so I got called down in the middle of my visit to a psychiatric appointment with this woman. And when I got called down there, there was supposed to be a counselor that came into the room because we had been talking about me getting back on my medication because I was having a problem. I was having problems focusing and with impulses, just not getting in fights and paying attention and, not getting in trouble within GOS 2. It was GOS 2. It was secure detention, and it was like a prison for kids. You know what I mean? So it was for all the worst kids that get kicked out of any program. They can't really go anywhere else. It's like the maximum security place for kids, right? But I went down to this thing. She was supposed to come in and talk with her and be like, you know what, this is a good idea for him. We think he should be on these meds, blah, blah, blah. So instead of doing that, she goes in there and she's like, nah, we don't think he should be on them, blah, blah, blah. We thought about it, and we don't want these meds here. It could cause, and I'm like, really? Like that kind of goes against everything you've been telling me. And it's kind of like not fair to just spring that right now. You should have said it to me before, right? But I lost my cool. And because I was a kid that had impulse control, I wilded out. I punched the fan, the hallway fan, and I broke that. And then I picked up they had one of these little baby dolls that was heavy. It was weighted, and it was like cried and shit like that. But they never really used it. They had it in the office there where I was meeting this lady. And so I picked up the doll and I smacked the lady with it. You know what I mean? Then I picked up the phone. I smashed the phone. I started ripping up all her papers. And when they ran in there on me, and I knocked the file cabinet over so they couldn't get to me right away. And I stood back like trying to brawl with them. And this dude, his name was No Neck Ed. We called him No Neck Ed. Just dived right through all that shit, got me on the ground. I'm a little kid, you know what I mean? So, but they didn't stop there. That's the problem is when I got on the ground, they had me all the way incapacitated. There was no reason to go any further, but they're digging their knees into my neck, throwing punches at me, knees and kicks and shit. But they get me up. I end up going to a hospital. They tell me, I come back. It was just for the beating. They had to bring me there because I had bruises and lumps and scrapes, but they bring me to the hospital. Then they bring me back. they put me on a suicide watch. And while I'm on the suicide watch, I'm asking them, why am I on a suicide watch? I'm not suicidal, blah, 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 blah. They're like, it's for your own safety. You're acting up and you're a risk to yourself. And I said, no, I'm not. And they're like, yeah, you are, and they had me in there with nothing. And they were saying I was going to be in there for, 24 hours. And each day it counts only as 8 hours because you only get the time counted for the time you're awake. And then at 8 o'clock at night, when you're supposed to go to sleep until the morning time, that doesn't count. So it's like, no, really, that's 3 days worth of being in here. And I flipped out. So I started punching the walls and shit. And they came in again, but this time they beat me up really bad. They choked me out, put me to sleep, and then started wiping me down. And when I woke up, I had 2 black eyes, busted lips. Every blood vessel in my neck was popped. You could see black lines like veins coming all down through my neck. My eyes were completely red. The whole white part was entirely red. There was not one part of whiteness showing. And I had been choked out so bad that all my blood vessels popped. And whether or not I want to say that affected me traumatically, I can't even tell you, because the amount of things that have happened to me throughout my life that are traumatic are vast. You know what I mean? There's so many different incidents like this within my life, whether I caused them for myself or not. What I needed was love, care, respect, appreciation, and some compassion. You know what I mean? Kids don't know better. We know what we learn. And the question of this video and this topic is now part of the story that I didn't even get to yet. Holy shit. Is did this now 38 of these kids that were in this school, the Dozier School for Boys, ended up on death row. 38 of those boys went on to commit murder and end up on death row. So 38 murders were caused due to the trauma. I believe they say that those boys would have went on to kill anyway, right? You can't say that because you don't know. But what you do know is what they went through and what did happen. Can you connect it perfectly? No. But what happened and what they witnessed, you put kids in fear for their life, fear to go to sleep. They were not comfortable for the entire time. And then the fear of going back to that place could have been tremendous for all those orphans that went out, found a family, and then lost it or something. Like, those kids had to have been living in pure fear. What fear does is it affects the amygdala and the way we deal with stress and our stress responses to life. We learn that at a young age. Now, in what trauma does and abuse does is it creates shame. And what shame does is it creates anger. And when you get angry, you do things. And how you do things is how you learn to do things. Like, if you learn in prison that the way you deal with your problems is through violence, then you're going to continue to use the things that work for you at the time, because why do anything different if you know that what you got to do is survive, and what you got to do to survive is be violent? You will continue to survive the way you know how, because it's part of your natural defense. It's part of a human is built a certain type of way. And when a human adapts, they adapt and they evolve to fit the circumstances of their situation. So if you put them in a circumstance at a young age where they feel like they need to survive and they need to do these gruesome things, to create fear in other people so that they don't come after them the way that they know is possible, because kids at that age shouldn't be witnessing that type of horrendous violence, because it makes it acceptable, it makes it normal, and it's one of those things, it's one of those lines you don't need to cross as an older person. You witness it at such a young age that now, after that, murder is not as bad. You know what I mean? In a type of way, maybe it's not as bad, or maybe it's so bad that you can't even leave your house because you think like everybody's going to murder you. It depends on the individual, but I'm telling you, the stress response in each individual is different, but the fact that they're going to get a stress response is not. You know what I mean? Like, these kids are affected so fucked up like I was affected. You know what I mean? And every time you go back and you deal with the same shit, it really it fortifies your belief that this is what it's like. And then you got the staff members, the people that you're supposed to trust to be taking care of you, beating your ass. And When I was at Project Leap, for instance, that was my first long-term program, right? I got sent there for a long-term stay as a 13-year-old. I got committed to Department of Youth Services until the age of 18 when I was 13 years old. So my first program was a long-term program meant for the most violent offenders in the state. I went there for stealing cars and acting like a stupid kid, bro. Right. Not that a lot of other kids didn't end up there for the same thing, but what it did for me was introduce me to a lifestyle I didn't know existed. So what you did was you put me around the criminals that I now had expectations to act like, because those kids aren't going to let you go there and act like some citizen and go home rehabilitated. You go into a DYS facility, all those other kids are going to be looking at you, trying to test you, break you, call you, like they're going to be calling you out, pulling your card. And if you don't stick up for yourself, the expectation is that you're going to be a bitch and you will be bullied like a motherfucker, because kids are ruthless, right? And so at that young age, what you are either going to be a victim or you're going to be a boss. And there's no in between. Like, you either have to be a savage monster or you have to be a victim, or you're going to end up being a victim. It's like the slave mentality. You know what I mean? You get beaten into slave ship. Like, you're just like, yes, sir, no, sir. Like, you don't even have the fight in you anymore. And at that point, it's like, that's a sad human being. And I've seen it happen to guys in DDU. I've seen it happen to guys who get extorted and beat up and fucked with in prison. And I just knew in my own head, for me, that could never be me and that could never happen to me. So when I was in Project Leap, I had been getting bullied a little bit. And one of the kids there, he was from I think he was from Cambridge, matter of fact. And he told me, he said, yo, I'm going to tell you something, bro. And you need to really listen to me right now. This is going to help you through the rest of your life. And I was listening intently. I'm 13 years old, getting hit with soaps and socks at nighttime and beat up and held underwater to drown me, right? And the staff members are laughing at me. They're not helping me at all. Matter of fact, at that time, one of the staff members was bringing us heroin, and he ended up getting caught, and I ended up in adult jail with him. When I caught my first adult case and went to adult jail, I was in the shock program with the guy, with the staff member who was bringing these kids heroin when I was there. And to me, I'm thinking that's a cool dude. You know what I mean? When I'm that age, the expectation is that's a cool dude right there. You know what I mean? That dude's bringing us the drugs. Like, he's hip. He's good dude, bro. But we are kids and we don't even know what's good for us yet. But that's our mind state, because the staff members, they're the ones who push that shit. They reinforce your beliefs that is the accepted norm. You know what I mean? Like, this is what it's like, and you got to be accepted by them to be accepted by us. Because for them to sit back and laugh like I was the kid that was getting bullied. I was 13 years old. This is a youthful offender program where kids that are 21 years old, 18 years old, 17 years old. This is all long term. There was not a good reason for me to be there, but they sent me anyways. And it was like I had to adapt and overcome or be a victim. And one night I decided, Mom, like, yo, fuck this, bro. There was this blood kid that was fucking me. I got up and I hooked off. And it was like that from the rest of my life forward. This kid told me that night, he said, look, you got to do first and think later. He said, if anybody ever calls you a bitch or a punk, you swing first and you think about it later. Never think about the consequences, he told me. And that was my guidance. That was my best piece of advice. That was the wisdom that set me for sale, like to sale, like throughout my life. That was that's what stuck with me. It wasn't a staff member pulling me aside saying, man, fuck what they think, man. You don't need to be tough. You don't need to be cool. You don't need to fit in with these kids. You need to get yourself together so that you can live a productive life. And this is how. That's not what was going on. They're like, yeah, what, those kids, they're picking on you. We don't want to get involved. It was like they were afraid to get picked on. Their staff members are straight up cowards, bro. Straight up bitches. You know what I mean? And if I was a staff member, I'd be smacking staff members who sat there and let a little kid get beat up with soaps and socks by 10 kids at nighttime for the simple fact that he's 13 and they're 18 and they can do it. You know what I mean? There was no good reason for it. It was fun. It was like recreation. And it was like, hey, like, we're doing this. We're gangsters. You know what I mean? Like soaps and socks. Like, ha, this is what they do in prison. You know what I mean? And like, that was the mind state. That was the attitude. This is what we do in prison. I'm going to get to some of the comments in the chat real quick and see what's going on. I apologize if this is a little break in the break in the show, but shit. This is what this is all about, engagement. The lives, I love engaging with my people and seeing what's going on. We don't got a big house in here tonight, but that's all right, man. We don't need it. The people that are here, salute to you, man. Salute to you for supporting a real one, bro. Salute to you for showing up and doing the right thing for a good dude, bro. Fuck that shit, right? Rich Stratton, man. Guess you proved the experts wrong, Maddie. You know, I'm trying to, bro, every single day. And that part right there is not easy, bro, proving them wrong, because every single day, and I'm telling you, bro, coming from somebody that's out here, you know, life is life and no bullshit. And you just got to deal with it. And the fact is that I could have used some real reentry skills by people that really went through some reentry shit when I was out there. Like I didn't, no one gave me the proper advice. First of all, first proper piece of advice I'm going to give you right here, right now. You heard it first, right here, bro. The first and best piece of advice you could have is for all those people who are writing their sweethearts, writer prisoners on their way home, planning on going home and living with them, right? You should never go from prison to living with someone that you met in prison without living alongside those people first. Because I am telling you, it's going to blow up. No one's meant to live like that right away. Like you can't live closed, confined space with someone like that. 9 times out of 10, it's going to turn into a disaster for you, and you're going to end up without a place to be. And that right there is what could set so many people on the right path. If you literally didn't just move in with that girl you met on Write a Prisoner, or the girl you broke up with before your last bid because it didn't work out then, it's not going to work out again. Don't go to their house. Get on your feet. And if you got a support circle to help you, I would literally choose the shelter and do it myself. If I had a chance to do this all over again, I would go to a fucking shelter and get housing, because if you do it right when you get out, it's going to take a little while, but at least within the year or 2-year mark of you being out there, you'll have that housing to live in. And then you don't need to worry about a motherfucking thing after that. You know what I mean? You got your dole, you're on your own, and you could support yourself, and you don't rely on anybody for anything. And that's the only way that you can be the best you for those other people, is if you can take care of yourself first. And that's some real shit. That's probably the realest thing you'll ever fucking hear, is for people that are still in prison, man, take it slow. You need people that actually got out and have been through the struggle and made it on their own to be able to tell you what is good advice. You don't listen to those people telling you need to learn how to balance a checkbook, but you don't need to know that right there. Come on, bro. That's the real advice. You can learn how to balance a checkbook. That's good too. You need to know how to do that. But I didn't have anybody to set me up with actual responsibilities. And they say that the structure and shit in the guidance of prison is supposed to set you up for a structured guide into life, right? No, that is not true, because now without the structure and the guidance of prison, it's like you're like a fucking melt blob, dude. Like you have no direction, and you almost need that structure. And that's what institutionalization is you can't live without that motherfucking structure. And it's been very hard. Sometimes when I first got out on my first bid, I would go to a psychiatric hospital just so that I could have that structured setting. And no surprises there, I end up going back to prison for 12 years. You know what I mean? On a fucking violent charge. Like, there's no fucking surprises there. I lived my whole 6 years in prison at war fucking, and then go home. It's no different. Your mindset is hostile, maximum security environment, the whole to the streets, right? No one takes that into account and consideration when they're sentencing you to do more time. They don't give a fuck. And that is another thing that you need to know, is that no one cares whether you know or not. It's just if you can make it or you can't. And if not, you gotta bet at some fucking shithole waiting for you, bro. That is not a lie. You can always go back any single day of your life. What really proves you're strong is standing out here in the real world and doing what you need to do, and not melting down, not getting into those fights that you can avoid. Like, you don't need to do that shit. You don't need to come home and just start acting crazy right away. You need to take it slow and do all that shit for yourself, the self-work, the mental health shit, because you don't even realize how institutionalized and fucked up you are until you come out and you start dealing with real life situations, and the trauma and things that you didn't even know were there starts triggering, and then you're like, whoa, like things are getting a little heavy real quick. Like, yeah. But yo, I don't know, man. I'm just gonna get to some of these comments in this chat real quick. Hold up. Pool boy, what's up, bro? How you doing, man? It's been a little bit, bro. You got to get up here on this podcast, bro. Oh, that's another thing, right, guys? So I'm working on these interviews and shit right now. I'm using a platform, an editing platform that I've never used before. So it's like I don't even want to use it. I would rather wait until I have the $300 and then pay for Final Cut Pro and do that, because I know the quality is gonna be fire. It's gonna be what I'm used to and how I like to edit my videos. I don't like cheesy transitions and cuts and shit like that. Yeah, it makes a video look cool. I want quality, intelligent, intellectual content that actually is entertaining and engaging, bro, at the same time. Like, and sometimes I think it all throws it off when you're editing, like, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, Bruce Wayne, what's the word, bro? Massachusetts DOC re-entry slogan should be "Good luck, pal." Fact, dude, that's hilarious. Oh man, kid, you're so on point, dude. What's up, Michael McQueenie? Pipeline, respect from New Zealand. So proud of your changes, Matt. I know how hard it is, and that's like no bullshit for real. If you knew the person I was, you would know just how much work I put in to be where I'm at today. And people don't recognize it, and that's you don't need to sit around and wait for the appreciation and of other people. You don't need their validation. You just need to do what's right for you, and if you will figure it out. As long as you can have that willpower to stay sober and stay on the right path. It's super hard sometimes. It can be super fucking hard. There's gonna be days and times where you're like, yeah, I can go back. You know what I mean? Like, this is too much. I don't give a fuck. I'm taking this motherfucker's head off, or whatever it is that you're going through. But you got to have a reminder for yourself. You really do. And yeah, exactly. Fact. Like, when you're treated like shit, you feel like shit. So those kids that are in there, they're getting treated like criminals, right? So what are they going to act like? They get treated like criminals. They are basically pieces of meat, and you're able to use them for whatever purpose you want. These staff were raping them. They were killing them. They were torturing for fun. Like, this is a place where sick individuals began to work to maintain that sickness on these children. Like, that is fucking ridiculous that the government never stepped in, knowing what they knew. You know what I mean? But and and yeah, so, and like I said, so there's another part of this story, right? And I have to get to that. So 34 of the individuals who went to this school were sentenced to death, right? So after they went to that school and then came home, they were sentenced to death, right? How does that even happen, dude? 34 motherfuckers that went to the same little school, reformatory. That means that more than 100 lives right there that you can count that they found, the 83 bodies that they were found that were buried, right? The countless marked deaths that they actually did report but said were from sickness and mental illness, and then all the people who went to the death chamber and got executed for crimes they committed due to the trauma that they received in their life. No one is born as a killer, right? You might be born with mental illnesses, but you're not born a killer. So your experiences are going to shape your life, right? So if you're the type of person who grew up in a home where your father's beating your mother, then you go to a reform school where the staff are beating you, and then you come home, your experience is going to be that experience there. That's what you're going to relate to. You're going to find the people who are like you, and you're going to fucking flourish as that type of person. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing that goes with people that have spent a lifetime in prison, or a very, very long time in prison, grew up in the juvenile justice system, and then they graduate and go upstate. That is, you're giving them a lifetime of experiences that they won't ever be able to relate to anything else but that. So you're going to have all these kids who can only relate to other people who have been through similar things. And how many of us are actually doing the right thing? Right. So they're going to find people that you're going to be mixed up in things, most likely, unless you could find really solid people to pull you out and be like, that's not living right. They don't know it yet, but I'm going to tell you because you deserve it. You're worth it. You know what I mean? This is crazy, man. Been a long day though, guys, and I appreciate everybody for showing up. Bruce Wayne, when I wrap up, I go to the Dollar Tree. He said, when I wrap up, I go to the Dollar Tree. Later that night, you can find me in a corner with a 50 pack of ramen, telling everyone I got the store now. I got the honey buns, donut sticks, and yellow bag. Yo, you're fucking retarded, dude. Oh, I love you, kid. Yeah. Damn, yo, K Razy, thank you for the 10. Thank you for the gifted memberships. 10 gifted memberships. K, you're like a huge support. And I wish there was more people like you. No bullshit. Like you really you inspire me because a lot of people don't care, like, you know what I mean? And you see somebody working and you're willing to help that person. So that's just dope, man. You're not helping me. You're helping the movement, you're helping the channel grow, and you're helping us reach people that need to hear certain things on a daily basis. You know what I mean? And I wish I could do this show. I'm really planning as soon as I get my apartment and as soon as I get things, bro, trust and believe that the grind is back on. I'm on this podcasting for life, bro. This is it. The W number for life. And we're going to bring in a new segment real soon. I'm going to keep it secret because we haven't worked out the kinks yet, but trust me, we're going to have a little morning show hopefully coming soon where dudes can tap in at least once a week in the morning, but if not, maybe more, right? So that'll be pretty cool, right? And we'll hopefully have the co-host, whatever. However it works out, I'll let you guys know. I'll keep you updated. I'm still working on it, but you could probably look forward to it. I'm just saying. So Brian Soldier, man, I haven't seen you around a little bit, man. Thanks for stopping through. I appreciate the love and support, bro. Um, he said, yo, W number podcast and all the members, Maddie. This convo brings back memories. I used to work at a DYS in Brockton, full circle feeling, you know. Wow, dude. Yeah. And you know what's crazy is I know a lot of staff members that actually worked in the Department of Youth Services that are not that type of people. You know what I mean? There's those guys that truly go in there to work thinking that everybody else that goes in there to work is on the same type of time as them, which is they're trying to help some kids who are fucked up youth, right? But then you got guys like this man, Miz. And let me put this story out there for you. Another good one of childhood abuse and trauma within a department facility, right? Me, again, I was knocked out by a staff member, and I'll tell you what happened, right? The first time I was ever knocked out and by a grown-ass man who was supposed to be taking care of me and keeping me safe, right? Imagine that. So all one night, there was this kid. I'm not going to bring his name up. We were all kids and shit like that. So, you know, he ended up ratting on me and shit. So he was downstairs in the floor below us. I had a roommate, a cellmate that was very violent. He would pull your card as soon as you come in the room. You're going to fight this kid. I did. My other roommates did. There was 3 of us in there. 2 of us fought that one dude already. I'm not gonna say his name either. But whatever. He turned out to be fucking rat too. Like I don't know what's going on. But anyways, and it is what it is, right? So fuck them, rats, whatever. Anyways, right? So yeah. So this kid, we're all cellies, and this kid's downstairs in the first floor of Goss 1. He's supposed to come upstairs. So I tell him, look, it man, you could come into my room and you know, you're my buddy. I knew him from other facilities and shit. And so I'm like, yeah, you come up here, be my cellie and shit, right? And so he does. He came upstairs, and right when he got up there, he asked if he could move into my room. He moves into my cell. So when he gets in there, I told him, look, bro, this dude's gonna try to pull your card, bro. You're gonna have to fight him, but just fight him. Don't make me look bad, please, right? And that's the expectation thing I was telling you about. The expectation is so thick within these juvenile facilities, adult facilities, anywhere you go, a facility, you're going to have the other convicts and people that are there are going to be having expectations that you're going to uphold the code within the facility. And that expectation as a juvenile becomes your lifestyle as an adult. You know what I mean? You spend enough time under those expectations. Your feeling is that nobody else's expectations matter. It's just those kids that you're gonna have to deal with by yourself. You're gonna have to be with. You need to be accepted in the places you're at. You know what I mean? Or it could be brutal for you. You know what I mean? And kids don't want to be dealing with that shit, bro. Like bullying and fucking whatever. Fuck that, bro. Right? I'll fight. I'm not gonna let you bully me, bro. You don't want to be a mark and a victim, because I've seen what happens to those dudes, bro. And it's like brutal, bro. And they never get a moment. You know what I mean? They're constantly getting smacked, like fucking, which is nuts, bro. Right? So I forget where I was going with. Oh yeah, so this kid, he comes into my room, but he bitches up. He doesn't want to fight the kid. So I got mad. And now this is a product of your environment thing, right? So I don't look at myself as this guy that did this to this kid. This is something that I did because I didn't know any better, right? So I beat him up all night, dude. Like I punched him around and took his blankets and made it so he couldn't sleep on the bunk. But he's punching the screen all night long. Every time we get up, I get up and I'm punching him and shit, telling him he's a bitch. Like, why didn't you fight him? You made me look bad. Like, and really, who's the coward? Me. I'm the coward because I'm like punching the kid who I said was my friend because I don't want to be labeled as a bitch either. You know what I mean? So I'm like beating this kid up like he made me look bad. You know what I mean? And at the time, it's all principle to me, but really it's because I just didn't want to be a bitch either. You know what I mean? So, or labeled as a bitch either. So, but anyway, so I take like the kid all night. He's punching the screen, and his hands. Now those screens are steel screens, like tough steel screens. He's punching them really hard and loud so he can get the staff's attention. And every time he does it, the staff walks down the hallway looking in the windows, but he stops. You know what I mean? He doesn't do it. He doesn't keep doing it. Just gets their attention. They walk away, come back, but it keeps on happening 5-6 times that night, maybe more. So the morning comes. Kid's probably happy as fuck to get out that cell. He went right to the desk and said, "Look, I got to get out of here. Like, I can't be in there." And went and snitched on everybody in there. And, do I blame? I don't know. I wouldn't have did that, but, that wouldn't have been me in that situation. And that's what I made sure of, is that I was never that guy in that situation. Right. So, this dude, we all get put in solitary cells, but this staff comes in, and because the kid who I invited and told was my friend, he was half black. He was like Cape Verdean or something. This dude, Miz, he was from New Bedford, right? And it's not my boy Miz, that is a rapper, more Beezy, who I interviewed and did videos and shit with. It's not him, it's a different Miz. It's like this black dude, he's from the streets of New Bedford. And he thought he was a gangster. He thought he was tough. And I remember him telling us as a kid, I don't listen to rap music anymore because it just makes me feel like I want to be, hood like I used to be and shit, right? Yeah, you're such a good dude now, right? You knock out little kids in a fucking DYS, you fucking punk. But so this dude, he tells me I'm racist. And he knocked me out cold, bro. Like straight up just knocked me out. He's like, "You're a racist little punk. You just beat on him because he's black. How's it feel?" Knocks me out. I wake up, there's nothing in my room. Well, I was ashamed, bro. I was ashamed that I got knocked out and I didn't do anything about it as that kid. And that made me so angry, bro. So fucking pissed off and so angry that I got knocked out and I didn't have the balls and the courage to beat up this grown man who was supposed to be my fucking, whatever he was supposed to be. I have no idea anymore. But yeah. And it's like, you go through that type of shit, and I would never be able to let myself. Now, getting knocked out to me is a traumatic thing that caused me shame and then anger, right? And it's exactly the progression, exactly what happens, I don't know. I just feel like that's the type of thing that a lot of kids go through, a lot of kids experience, and then brings it with them for the rest of their life. And I actually have a good point to go upon that, right? And it's like, does trauma make you violent, right? I don't know if you can give it a definitive answer, right? But trauma to me definitely makes you violent. Trauma to me definitely made me angry because, like I said, getting knocked out, it made me ashamed, and then I was angry, bro. And I would never let that happen again. That feeling of shame, dude, that I so despised myself. But why? I didn't do anything wrong, bro. Technically, like I really didn't. Is every kid supposed to be a thoroughbred gangster from a 13-year-old to fucking rest of for me, what I was supposed to do as like a little G, like I'm supposed to strap on my sneakers, and as soon as I see that dude again, light off on him. You know what I mean? And then they get more time. And then I got something else to add onto the bucket list of fucking traumas or whatever. Like, but it's like that was the expectation for me on myself. Nobody else had that expectation for me, but because of what I felt like was the expectations of all those other kids, I was able to convince myself that I must be a bitch because I'm not knocking this dude out as soon as I see him, whether I had the capability to or not as a scrawny ass little kid. But that should have been something I never had to deal with, bro. You know what I mean? Something that I never dealt with, like, or any kid really has to deal with. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes a kid does need a little bit of a beating, but like in that type of environment, in that type of circumstances, in that type of way, it's different. You know what I mean? And the expectations of the people that are around you definitely add to the expectations you put on yourself to be a certain type of way. And like, yeah, that shit was fucked up. Yo, K, you do that again? No. Okay. Kick fix. Yo, Maddie, what's good, brother? Hey, what's up, man? Jose Feliciano, K Razy, Tech Death Hippie, great podcast, man. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that a lot. I put my heart and soul into these podcasts, bro. And believe it or not, like the only reason why I haven't been busting out mad videos and mad podcasts is because I'm just in transition in my life. So I'm like moving from one place to the other, and I don't have the time to invest in it at this point. But I do invest most of my time into it. It's just that the focus isn't there like it was. Like you have to be like I have to feel secure in order to focus the way I want to and put the effort that I need to, because I have fire videos in the clip right now. Like the interview I'm editing right now, I'm gonna go edit it tonight. I'm gonna try to get it up by Thursday, the latest. But this interview is probably the most fire interview I have yet. It is absolutely out of this world. You guys need to see this. Definitely tell other people to be looking forward to this interview. And I'm telling you, I'll give you more about it so you know exactly what to look for. But it's with another girl, and this girl's life is so fucking nuts, bro. And everything she brings to the table on it is so badass, and I appreciate it so much. That's gonna hit a lot of people. That one, that's gonna be a good one. So can't wait for that. Um, and like another point, like, yeah, another point I think I should bring up before I get into more comments and things is um the fact that what the advice that I got given from the only confidant that I had, which is you do not think about what your actions will be. Like you don't think about the consequences. Sorry. You don't think about what the consequences will be because you need to survive. And in order to survive, you can't think or else fear gets in and you won't do what you need to do. So for the rest of my life, my whole mission was to block fear and do first. Never think about what the fuck could happen over my actions. Never think that if I stab, pull a trigger, smash someone's teeth down their throat, the consequences of that action's gonna be not worth it. You know what I mean? Like it's just you don't, because I'm not thinking about the consequences. You remember? Like that's not part of the equation. The equation only comes in black and white. Did this person disrespect me? Does he now in my world, does he deserve to get killed or beat up or whatever the fucking situation is, which I've never killed anybody, but I'm just saying like that's what's in my mind. I mean, I've probably tried, you know what I mean? Definitely tried like beating people and whatever, but it's like that's the fucking mindset, bro. And I really did live to that mindset very tightly, almost like it was a rule book in the guideline for my life. Because going outside of that, it's like brings in the fear. Like it once you allow fear into you in a situation like that, it's like you can't break free from it. And I've seen people crumble. Like I said, I didn't know that you could crumble and do as a kid from fear and shit like that. But I was afraid without having to. I couldn't help it. I was just like, I was a little tiny kid around a bunch of fucking kids that, they had the group mentality, and when they get that, you know what I mean? And that was the only place it ever happened, because as soon as I started fighting back, that all goes away. And that's what I learned is that, wow, this kid's advice was on point. You know what I mean? Like, that's the advice I needed. Thank you, bro. It's not like, I was like, even though it was the worst advice I could ever get in my life, that's the best advice I ever got in my life at the time. It's the only advice that got me through and helped me survive hell on earth. The hell I'm created for myself, not for nothing, because there's people that do go to prison and have experiences such as minimums, and a little bit of rehabilitation, they go home without that severe PTSD trauma. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody goes through that experience, but the ones that go in very young and grew up raised in the like raised on the gangster ideals, the gangster lifestyle, raised in DYS, that with the expectations upon you that you're gonna be living up to that code, living up to the gangster lifestyle, being a dog. You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to. You a dog, but like, you don't fucking take shit from anybody. In the more you're like that, and the more thorough and less choosy you are about it, the more respect you're gonna get, and that equals out to love, right? You're what you believe might be love from others, right? The crew that you're running with gonna show you love. They're gonna give you respect. They're gonna be there for you. But are they really, though? It's not all real, bro. It's not real. You know what I mean? But and that's not to say the bonds you create in prison aren't real. Those are bonds made in trauma, and those bonds are realer than anything else. And I'm telling you, I've met friends that I had in prison that have been my friends forever, and I'll never leave that behind, and I will never forget them. You know what I mean? And that right there, those trauma bonds are strong. You know what I mean? That creates real bonds, like war, going overseas. And it's funny because someone came into my chat, and if you watch this, I want you to hear this, right? You come into my chat telling me that basically if I didn't wear fatigues, like, and fight for my country, I'm a clown, right? Well, how about this, dude? My first charge was a bowl of a marijuana pipe that had no resin in it. It was fresh from the store, and I got put on a chins, right? A child in need of services, which is probation for, at the time, I was less than 11 years old. I think I might have been 10 or 11, and I got put on a chins and put on drug testing and I was in the system right then and there. That day forward, I never left it, and I still have it until right now. I'm still on probation, right? Fighting for my life on a daily fucking basis to stay free, to stay sane, and to help motivate myself and others to do the same, right? And I don't have that pressure. I want to do that. You know what I mean? That's something I want to do. I want to expose the system. I want to inspire motherfuckers that they can do the same shit as I do, bro. Like, it's tough. It's not easy. It's a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication, but at the same time, it's very, very, very rewarding, when it actually pays off, you know, damn, it is, bro. And it feels really good when you got all the people that come in and can relate to you. And you know what I mean? They're telling you like, yo, Maddie, bro, I really, this did something for me, bro. Like, and that it happens all the time. And the reason why it's so important for me to tell stories, gritty prison stories, raw, violent, pretty prison stories, is because that is exactly how it really is. And that is the mindset of a prisoner. That is the mindset of every convict in America, right? So if you don't like that, you can shut the system down, right? If you want to. Everybody's got to agree on it. You created that mindset within me. The actual evidence goes behind that, right? You created a mindset of violence. I am not inherently violent. I was taught to be violent within the system. And it carried me through my life trying to survive by being violent because I didn't know another way. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's a lot of different aspects to it, man. JT Pipeline, what's up? I'm quick to snap too, man. A lot of us are, because that's exactly what happens with trauma. That's exactly what happens with it, is it makes you so, like, you can't put up with it. It's almost like as soon as you feel that automatic trigger, like that response in your body that you get from witnessing things that bring back that violent thing, or going through situations that really bring out that trauma and make you violent, and they can make you into somebody that you were before without even knowing it, because you're automatically switching right into that mode. You know what I mean? You have to survive. You're right into it, and without even thinking it, you could be right back. It takes 1 pound of pressure or 5 pounds of pressure in 1 split second to go back for the rest of your life. And it's not worth it ever, because 1 day after, 5 years after, 10 years after, however long it takes for you individually to realize that that wasn't worth it, you will realize that at one point, and you will be sitting in prison doing it, and you won't have the option to take it back. You won't have the option to get out. You won't have the options to start over. You will be doing the rest of your life in prison, and you will not ever get out to figure it out again. Right. And that's just what trauma can do. It can make you do things without thinking about the consequences because you can't think about them, or that fear will prevent you from living up to the expectations of the people who are around you. And I appreciate everybody for showing up tonight. If you want, you could help me by contributing to the podcast. My Cash App is running along the bottom. I'll throw it right here. It's just the Cash App and PayPal. Um, you know, that's also not an expectation, man. You come here, show support, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and that's all that matters to me. Definitely got some fire videos on the way. I've been going through a lot of shit, and it made me realize just how important it is to talk about these things, bro. And so I had to come here, and this is my therapy. This is my therapy right now, is trying to put people on to this shit, because you know, we can't be sending all these kids out to the world. All the adults getting out of prison, still kids in their mind, because they literally went from DYS to adult prisons and never matured as an adult. I am an intellectually not, I can't say that. The word superior is not in my vocabulary, but it's like I am intellectually capable. I am intelligent, but I'm emotionally stunted because I never learned how to control these things for myself. And not only that, but I was given other experiences that taught me different ways of control that aren't healthy. You know what I mean? And so what they are, I'd have to like really sit down and think about it when I'm not so tired and get into it. You know what I mean? But this is why I come on here. Every single time I come on here, I'm going to come on whether I'm in a good mood, bad mood, tired, not tired. That's real life. And that's why I do this podcast, is so you can see exactly what a real dude getting out of prison, who really gone through this shit, who really lived this life. Because I really lived this life. Whether you think I'm on here fronting or not, whether you think I've ever gone and lied or not, I've really lived this life, and I was really a monster. And anybody who really knew me upstate will tell you, you don't want to fuck with my hands, bro. You don't want to fuck with me in general, dude. I was a fucking maniac, a psycho dude, right? But I've learned through God, through Christianity, through Jesus Christ in general, because once I started believing in Jesus Christ, it was like, he's going to bring things to you. You know what I mean? You don't have to go, as long as you seek him first, you're going to find he's going to give you things that will open your eyes. Like they say, the scales fall off and you see it for what it really is. He's going to give you that. You know what I mean? He's going to allow you to have that for the first time ever. And then once you do see it like that, it's going to be hard to go back to being that savage. You know what I mean? Because I have a conscience now, you know what I mean? Where before I could completely shut that shit off. And, you know, despite the fact that I do go through certain things now where people think that, you know, I'm acting without a conscience. I'm not. I'm acting in a way where the only way I know how without losing the control I do have. You know what I mean? So salute to everybody for showing up, man. I appreciate all the love, all the support, everybody who hits the like button, everybody who hits that share button, everybody who's dropped a comment, man. All that support matters. You guys are the greatest. This podcast is going to do big things, and I promise you that. I will never stop, and you will see me make mistakes. You will see me go through dips and lows. The views don't matter to me. What matters to me is that the impact that this podcast has is major, and it will affect you in good ways only, right? So like, I want to make you smile, but I also want to make you realize. I don't want to bring up and trigger traumas, but you need to know that those are triggers. You know what I mean? So if you're listening to something and it brings you to a certain place and you're like, wow, man, I don't know if I like that. That's because you've gone through it, and you know, and that there, you know, you need to work on something right there, because you know what your trigger is. And I'm not trying to do that to you, but you need to know, because no one else is telling you, bro. No one else is keeping it real like that, dude. I really get on here and really keep it raw and funky, bro. But I appreciate everybody, like I said, man. Yeah, you're digging the shirt, kid. What about at the bottom? Injustice for All, baby. That's the best CD ever, man. Like Metallica. I love this shirt. Matter of fact, I just picked up a whole collection of shirts for the podcast. I'm gonna have new shirts every single podcast forever, dude. Like, that's my thing. I love graphic t-shirts that have great messages or cool stuff on them. Like, that's my thing. I love it. I go searching for them. You know what I mean? Mike Eels, I'm late, but I'll catch up. What's good, everybody? Yo, B, hey, what's up, man? How you doing, Mike? Hope everything's good, man. God bless you, and hopefully you're living your best life today. Yo, be easy, Maddie. The W number is the truth. Stay humble and stay blessed, bro. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you a lot. And the more we talk about it and tell people about the W number, oh, let me tell you about the merch. Let me tell you about the merch coming, bro. I got stickers. They'll be here Friday. Fucking badass stickers. And then I got t-shirts that we're working on now. And I'm gonna start doing t-shirt giveaways. I'm ordering a small batch of them, and they're gonna have the W number thing on the back so you could scan it with your phone, and it's gonna bring you straight to my channel. So I have all this already designed, and we're ordering all this stuff. I already ordered this. The stickers are on the way. The t-shirts are gonna come. So those two things are set. But I'm gonna start working on more merch, and we're gonna start opening up the W number 2 merch from my guests, so they can sell their merch through my podcast. That only things that have to do with supporting convicts and supporting recovery and supporting rehabilitation in society, which is one of my last podcast guests in an interview that I'm going to put out soon, has a great organization. I'll bring more light to it on my next podcast and let you guys know about it, because it's actually absolutely dope. And the t-shirt she's wearing and during the podcast says "Free Me." That's her brand. She does all kinds of cool things. She does, before she even knew about my podcast, the W number, she had a sweatshirt with her F number, her MCI Framingham F number, with all the people she lost to incarceration and addiction on the back, gun violence, whatever it is. It's a dope ass sweatshirt, and it gave me some insight into what, if that's someone would have that made for themselves, that's something I could do. I'm going to start doing customs, all that shit. Right. So we're working on some cool things, man. I hope everybody will like that, but so, have you hit up that prison guard for a collab? Honestly, no, I haven't, because I've been working with a few different people on their stories now, right? And I'm the type of person in my podcast, I work very closely with my guests so that I could bring out the best story and get the best podcast out of it. And I'm working with a few guys from the feds. Matter of fact, tomorrow I'm gonna have Jason Noble's story. I'm recording it anyways, and then I'm gonna edit it and get it out to you guys. Part 1 of his story, his childhood, and all the way till now. Boo Boo's whole story, the gladiator from Fall River, like that video, he's a straight up gladiator, but he turned his whole life around now, bro. And that's an amazing story. I already know a lot of it, and his sister's a good friend of mine, so I talked to her about it a lot. So it's that's gonna be an amazing video. I have other videos already recorded that are amazing, dude. And I got some stories in my head that I know I'm gonna drop some bombs on you, bro. Right. So I can't wait to get this all done and get in a place where I'm constantly focused and moving on this shit, because that's the best right there. Hector Bravo, yeah, I know. He actually would be a great guest, but the reason why I didn't reach out to him immediately and start talking with him right away too, another reason is because I realized he has so many podcasts where he talks about repeating the same message over and over and over again. So if you want to watch him, you can already find him other places. So it's not going to be that big of a deal if he comes on my podcast. But as you know, I do things in a specific way. So it's I get a good story out of anybody, no matter how many times they told it, right? Bruce Wayne is hilarious. Hell yeah, he is, Leslie Marie. Trauma makes it that much easier to be violent, bro. Working. No bullshit. And the more trauma, the more amplified the effects. Yo, exactly. And yo, too, because you were upstate with me for a long time, dude. And you went through the same types of things too. Well, similar types of things. Like our experiences are along the same lines. But my studio is about to close. I appreciate everybody for showing up. This was a good one. I'm glad I got to talk about these things and get this stuff off my chest, because I'm so sick of the system and how they just brush things off and then no one ever knows about them. It's like, yeah, only specific people know about them, but man, let's share this shit, bro. Get these messages out there, man. Let people see firsthand from somebody who's actually been there, and hear it from somebody who's actually done that. You know what I mean? Appreciate everybody again. If I didn't get to your comment, get to your question, you can email me. I'm gonna put my my email in this chat right here. Mass Assassin, thank you, brother. And also before you leave, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. But my email is just the W number podcast Shit, I'm not even typing up there. I don't know why it's not working, but yeah, it's not working right now. I'm sorry, guys, but I'll definitely throw it in the description and shit. But it's just the W number podcast at gmail.com with no spaces or dashes. Just the W number podcast, straight word. I put capitals at the beginning of each one, the W number podcast. So at gmail.com. Email me if you want to be a guest, if you want me to be a guest, whatever. Or if you want to, contribute to the channel in some type of way, whatever it is you want to do. I appreciate everybody for showing up. W number. Ow!